William Henry Getty France, or as everyone calls him, Bill France, was born in Washington, D.C. on September 26, 1909. France and his family moved to Daytona Beach, Florida, where he began painting houses and then worked at a car dealership. He also set up a car repair shop in Daytona that is still up to date for entertainment. On March 8, 1936, the first stock car race was run on the beaches of Daytona. The track was a little over 3 miles long, where they ran 78 laps, making the race 240 miles long. The city posted a purse of $5,000 and the winner got $1,700, which was Milt Marion. Bill participated in 16 races held on the beach, finishing a high of first place twice and having 6 top 5 finishes. After World War II, France decided to stop driving and focus more on promoting racetracks. France promoted racetracks at Seminole Speedway immediately after the war, and he built the Okanagan Speedway in 1947. On December 14, 1947, Bill France had a meeting with a couple of people in the Streamline Hotel down in Daytona, Florida, and at that meeting, the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, NASCAR, was born. A couple months later, on February 15, 1948, NASCAR officially ran its first race under the name NASCAR, and Red Byron won NASCAR's first race. On June 19, 1949, the first NASCAR strictly stock race was ran at the Charlotte Fairgrounds Speedway. This race was 200 laps. It paid $2,000 to the winner. The strictly stock series is what we call the NASCAR Cup Series today. Jim Roper won that race, and Sarah Christian, who ended up finishing 14th, is the first woman to race at NASCAR's top series. The 1949 racing season only had 8 races on 8 different tracks. Red Byron, who was the first winner under the name NASCAR, ended up picking up the championship and becoming NASCAR's first ever champion. Car owner Raymond Parks on the left, mechanic Red Vogue in the middle, and driver Red Byron on the right. The first 2-time champion in NASCAR's Premier Series was Herb Thomas, winning both the 1951 championship and the 1953 championship. In 1951, Thomas had 7 wins, 16 top 5s, and 18 top 10s. In 1953, he had 12 wins, 27 top 5s, and 31 top 10s. He was close to winning a third championship in 1954, but came up one spot short, finishing second to Lee Petty, who earned his first championship. In 1959, the Daytona International Speedway was completed, and on February 22, 1959, the first ever Daytona 500 was run. More than 40,000 people attended the first race. The winner of the race was Lee Petty, but that wasn't decided until more than 2 days later. The finish resulted in a photo finish between Lee Petty and Johnny Beauchamp, where Petty was 2 feet in front of Beauchamp at the finish. On December 1, 1963, at Jacksonville Speedway, Wendell Scott became the first African-American driver to win a NASCAR race. Scott won the 200-lap race, but Buck Baker, who actually finished second, was deemed the winner of the race. It took NASCAR officials almost 2 hours to find that Scott was the actual winner of the race and that he had lapped the field twice. Scott wasn't credited with the win until 2 years later, and 60 years later, the Scott family was finally presented with the trophy. In 1964, Richard Petty won his first championship, and he also won the 1964 Daytona 500. He would go on to win 7 championships and 200 races in his 34 years of racing at the top level in NASCAR. In the 13 years since his first championship, Petty earned all 6 of his 7 championships. He was named the King of NASCAR because he had the most wins out of anyone who has competed. In 1975, Dale Earnhardt made his first start in NASCAR. He only made one start in 1975, which came at the World 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway. That race is the longest race of the year, being 600 miles. Richard Petty would go on to win that race, leading 234 laps, but Dale Earnhardt started 33rd place and ended up finishing 22nd in his number 8 74 Dodge. On February 20th, 1977, Janet Guthrie became the first woman in NASCAR to race in the Daytona 500. She started the race in 39th place and finished in 12th. She only raced 4 seasons from 1976 to 1980. In her second and final Daytona 500 start in 1980, she finished 11th, beating other drivers like Richard Petty, Bobby Allison, and David Pierce. On February 18, 1979, NASCAR had its first televised race from beginning to end. The 1979 Daytona 500 is famously known for the fight that broke out on the final lap between Cale Yarborough and Donnie Allison. The two drivers were battling hard down the back straight on the last lap when the came together and crashed in turn 3. Richard Petty managed to sneak through and take home the win while they were fighting it out in the infield. Dale Earnhardt would make the 1979 season his first full-time season in the NASCAR Cup Series. Only 7 races into the season, Dale would pick up his first win at Bristol Motor Speedway. He started in 9th place and finished first, leading 163 of the 500 laps run that race. That same year, on November 18, 1979, Richard Petty won a record of 7 championships. That next year in 1980, Dale Earnhardt would win his first championship. He won 5 races that year, including Atlanta, Bristol, Nashville, Martinsville, and Charlotte. 5 years later, from Richard Petty's last championship in 1984, Richard Petty won his 200th and final race at Daytona on July 4th. Petty wouldn't win another race or championship in the next 6 years when he chose to retire from NASCAR at the finale race at Atlanta Motor Speedway in 1992. In 1986, 1987, 1990, and 1991, Dale Earnhardt would pick up 4 more championships, making that 5 championships in total. In 1987, Dale got 11 wins starting that championship run. That would be the most wins he would ever get in a season in his 27-year NASCAR Cup Series career. The 1992 finale in Atlanta Motor Speedway also marked the first race ever for the up-and-coming star Jeff Gordon, as Richard Petty made his final NASCAR start, but his race ended early because of a crash that resulted in a fire. In that same race, team owner and driver Alan Kulwicki ended up winning his first and only championship, beating Bill Elliott by 10 points. On April 1st, 1993, Alan Kulwicki was tragically killed in a plane crash when he was landing in Bristol, Tennessee for the Cup race at Bristol Motor Speedway. That same year, Dale Earnhardt would get his 6th championship. On August 6, 1994, NASCAR had its first race at the famous Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The track, which was mostly known for the Indy 500, now had NASCAR's best drivers racing on the track. Jeff Gordon ended up taking the inaugural win. At the end of the 1994 season, Dale Earnhardt would earn his 7th championship, tying Richard Petty, making NASCAR have 2 7-time champions. In 1998, on February 15th, at the 40th running of the Daytona 500, Dale Earnhardt would finally win his first Daytona 500. He tried to win that race for 20 years, and that's where NASCAR commentator Mike Joy's famous quote says, 20 years of trying, 20 years of frustration, Dale Earnhardt would come to the caution flag to win the Daytona 500. After that race, every pit crew on pit road lined up to congratulate Dale on his win. That day of motorsport showed a true sign of sportsmanship. It would be the biggest win of his career. 3 years later, on February 18, 2001, on the final lap, Dale Earnhardt was racing hard and coming into turn 3 when Dale was turned head-on into the wall, killing him instantly, while Michael Waltrip would go on and win his first Daytona 500, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. would finish second. Earnhardt's death would impact so many fans. Dale was 50 years old. He had 76 wins, 281 top 5s, and 428 top 10s. 2001 would also mark the first season for Jimmie Johnson. His first full-time season would come in the next year, 2002, when he drove for Hendrick Motorsports, where he would win 3 times at tracks like California Speedway and sweeping Dover in 2002. At this time, NASCAR was in the Generation 4 car, or Gen 4, making the car based on how they would look in real life on the road. Jimmie Johnson would dominate the 2006 to 2007 NASCAR season, driving for Hendrick still. He would win the championship those years, putting him immediately to 5 championships. In 2006, he won 5 races, including his first Daytona 500. In 2010, he won his 5th consecutive NASCAR Cup Series championship. At the 2013 Daytona 500, the Gen 6 car made its first appearance with the hope to go faster and have more grip and look like the cars they are modeled after on the street. Danica Patrick would make history as she would win the pole for the Daytona 500, making her the first female to win a pole for a NASCAR Cup Series race. Jimmie Johnson was able to pick up his 2nd Daytona 500. That same year, Jimmie Johnson would win his 6th championship. In 2014, NASCAR implemented a playoff-type format where with 10 races to go, the top 16 drivers in points would have a chance to race for a championship. After 3 races, 4 drivers would get eliminated into the last 4 in the playoffs. The final 4 would have a chance in the final race to race for a championship. Whichever driver in the final 4 finishes ahead will win the championship for that year. Kevin Harvick, driving for Stewart-Haas Racing, would be the first driver to win a championship with this playoff format. In 2016, at Homestead Miami Speedway, Jimmy Johnson would put himself in contention to win the race and the championship with a late race caution. Jimmy Johnson would hang on to win the 2016 NASCAR championship, tying Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt with 7 championships. Now there are 3 7-time NASCAR champions. After 9 years with the Gen 6 car, NASCAR made the decision to build a new car, the Gen 7, also known as the Next Gen, where a lot of changes would be made. Instead of 5 lieutenants, the Next Gen would only have 1. The teams would not be able to build their cars because NASCAR would manufacture the cars, so everyone would get the same car. In 2022, at the Clash at the LA Coliseum, we would get to see the Next Gen car in action, and there would be some ups and downs. The first champion in the Next Gen era would be Joey Logano. Drivers like Kurt Busch and Alex Bowman were sidelined due to concussion-like symptoms after hitting the wall. Kurt Busch was trying to qualify for the Summer Pocono race when, coming off of Turn 3, his car got loose and backed into the outside wall. He would be out for the rest of the season as he announced his retirement at the end of the 2022 season. Alex Bowman was racing hard at Texas Motor Speedway, and he blew a tire and backed into the outside wall, giving him concussion symptoms and keeping him out of the car until the end of the season. In the 75 years NASCAR has been around, a lot sure has changed from racing on the beaches of Daytona moving to the high banks of Daytona International Speedway. It is going to be interesting to see where NASCAR is going to be in the next 75 years.